Okay, waking up suggests a process in the development of human consciousness that starts with what I see as deeper sleepness and takes us through to states of waking and beyond waking. So in deeper sleepness, the person has very little awareness of themselves or others, and I'm sure that everyone that's watching this video will know people in their own lives who have very little awareness of the effect that they have on others. And they may be people that have quite a lot of power. Very often managers or politicians live in states of deeper sleepness. They don't have a lot of awareness of the effect they have on others. As a person begins to wake and they go through the various states of developing consciousness, from deeper sleepness we develop a dream state where people are starting to be more aware of those around. We get into the waking state as people start to experiment with life. And then we get to the point where people actually wake up, where people become aware of who they are. They become aware of the power that they have and the consequences of action. And that's very much comparable with being in the now, being here now. But from here on, there's an issue. Once we're awake, we can start to develop objective consciousness, intuitive consciousness and creative consciousness that actually create our future, that take us on into the areas of self-development. I tell a story about, which for me was a story of violent abuse, really, and it was one that had a profound effect on me when I was quite young and changed my life completely, and it made me become the things I am now. There is a process that happens in the individual where there's a splitting between the observer and the observed, between I and me. I can observe myself doing something. And it's something that psychotherapeutically is a common experience for people that have been through the extremes of experience. So people that have been raped, assaulted, people that have been in extreme accidents, have had inappropriate operations, all kinds of things that happen to people, they will split between I and me. So they separate out. And the classic for us would be when a woman has a child. When a woman has a child, she splits herself so that she has the wonderful ability to, it's almost an amnesic effect, where she loses the memory of the pain of childbirth. I'm sure that if men had a child, they'd only ever do it once, they wouldn't do it again. Once a woman has a child and she gets beyond the pain of childbirth, she forgets the pain until she comes to be in labour again, and then the memory comes back and she doesn't want to do it, but it's too late then. But we all have that ability at the extremes of difficult experience to have an internal split. And it's something that for many people, for me, became a problem that had to be healed. It had to be put back together. The I had to talk to me. And that is part of waking up, it's part of the process, and it's described in the book. The books that follow on in this series are very much about, okay, if I'm awake, what do I do? What do I do? What happens next? Because in awakeness, I can take responsibility for who I am. Up to that point, it tends to be other people's fault. In awakeness, I have to be responsible for who I am as I'm not awake. The issue is, if I have that level of responsibility, what do I do next? Well, the first thing has to be, and the next book is about, very clearly about this, it's about stepping out of karmic cycles. Now, a karmic cycle is about the issue of cause and effect. I do something and it has an effect, and the problem in fixed behaviours, as happened to most of us, is that we keep doing the same things and getting the same results, and then we think, you know, I didn't want to do that and I've done it again. So the issue is, how do I break out of that cycle? Once I've broken out of that cycle, the next step is, okay, if I'm not hampered by the past, if I'm not repeating the same processes, what do I want to do? In popular speak, that becomes very much the law of attraction, or in some cases the law of deliberate creation, as has been talked about in things like The Secret. The issue is, how do I actually make those things happen? One of the things about the idea of the law of attraction is that I can produce a world that I want. I can create the experience that I want. But the issue is, how do I do that? And it's the very practical step. So the rest of this series is very clearly about how do I actually create the world that I want? How do I do that in a very practical, easy way to understand?